My name is Cassandra Bennett. I am 34 years old and I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. For as long as I can remember, I have believed that family means loyalty no matter how flawed the people you love might be. That belief cost me more than I ever expected. For months, I had been paying for every part of my sister's wedding: the lakeside venue, the flowers, the catering, the music, even her bridal robe stitched with golden initials. It wasn't about showing off. It was about love, about proving that we could still act like a family. That morning, while I was getting ready for work, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Clarissa. She wrote, "Hey Cass, we had to make some changes. You're not on the guest list anymore." I froze, staring at the screen, waiting for the punchline that never came. I typed back, "What do you mean?" And her answer arrived almost instantly. "It's just, you eat too much. It's a classy event." The world around me went silent. I could still smell coffee brewing, but the sound was gone. I was the one who had paid for that so-called classy event. I was the reason she had her dream wedding. Yet in that moment, I became an outsider in a celebration I had built. Ethan, my husband, saw my face turn pale and asked no questions. He simply said, "This time, don't stay quiet." I looked at the message again. My reflection faint on the phone's surface, and whispered to myself, calm but certain, "If I'm not invited, neither is my money." Before we go further, tell me in the comments what time it is where you're watching and which city you're in. It helps me see how far this story of family and betrayal has spread. It started quietly, the way most betrayals do, with a single phone call during my lunch break. I was halfway through a salad at my desk when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months: Clarissa. Her voice came through soft and sweet, polished in the way people sound when they want something. "Hey, Cass, I was wondering if you could help me out a little," she said. "Just a few small things for the wedding." I asked what kind of small things, and she laughed lightly. "You know, venue deposits, the catering quote. Maybe some decorations. I'll pay you back once everything settles." She spoke as if money was just air, something that floated and came back on its own. I wanted to believe her. She sounded so sincere, almost like the little sister I used to cover for when she'd sneak out. But this time it wasn't about late-night concerts. It was about thousands of dollars. That evening I told Ethan about the call. He looked up from his glass and said, "A little help usually turns into a lot, Cass." I smiled, brushing it off. It's her wedding. She deserves something special. He gave that quiet nod of someone who already knew how this would end. 2 nights later, my mother Margaret called, inviting me to dinner, a rare gesture which immediately made me suspicious. The restaurant she chose was one of her favorites in downtown Baton Rouge, the kind where the lighting was dim and the air conditioning too strong. As soon as I sat down, I knew exactly why she'd asked me there. She smiled warmly. "You know how much this wedding means to your sister?" She began slicing her food neatly. "She's young, and all this planning can be overwhelming. Maybe you could take a bit off her plate." I stirred my drink. "She already asked me to handle the venue," I said. "Perfect," she replied too quickly, pretending to sound grateful. She mentioned the lakeside one. "It's lovely, isn't it?" Then came her favorite line, the one that had worked on me since childhood. "You've always been the responsible one, Cassandra. You have a good job, and family helps family." It was the same melody every time, guilt disguised as tradition. My father, Howard, had been quiet through the meal until then. He wiped his mouth with a napkin, his tone calm but deliberate. "You make good money, Cass. It's fair that you help your sister. She's not as fortunate." There it was, the final push. I could have argued, but experience told me it would only make things worse. "Fine," I said. "I'll take care of the venue." Margaret reached across the table, squeezing my hand as if she'd won a negotiation. "That's my girl." The next morning, I met with the event coordinator by the lake. She was efficient, all business, tapping her pen against the form. "We'll need a deposit to lock in your date," she said. I wrote the check, signed my name, and wrote Clarissa's name on the client line. My handwriting looked confident, though my stomach turned. On the drive home, I turned off the radio. The sun burned low across the road, and I told myself I'd done the right thing. A part of me even felt proud. Another part, smaller but louder, whispered that I'd just made a mistake. That weekend, Ethan was cooking dinner when he asked, "Did you already pay?" I said yes and explained the details. He set the spatula down and looked at me. "Are you sure this isn't manipulation?" I smiled because it was easier than admitting doubt. "It's family. What could go wrong?" He didn't laugh. He just turned back to the stove, eyes thoughtful. Later that night, I put the receipt in a folder, noticed the total, and exhaled. It wasn't a small favor. It was enough to pay for a year of college tuition. Still, I convinced myself it was fine. That's what big sisters do. They help. They make things easier. They hold the line so no one else has to. As I sat on the couch scrolling through pictures of the venue, the open deck, the soft light, the calm water, I felt something inside me shift. I wasn't just paying for a wedding, I was buying silence, peace, maybe even belonging. 2 days later, a notification from my banking app confirmed the payment had cleared. No gratitude followed, no call, no text, just a smaller balance and a feeling that I had stepped across a line I wouldn't find my way back from. One favor turned into a shopping spree I never signed up for. It started with a message from Clarissa that popped up early one Monday morning while I was getting ready for work. "Hey Cass, just a quick thing," it read. "The dress I liked isn't available anymore, but there's a new collection from Atelier Elise. It's more elegant. Could you cover the deposit until my card clears?" The word deposit was beginning to sound like a family tradition. I didn't reply immediately. 15 minutes later, another text arrived. "It's only 3,000. I'll send the receipt later." There was no question mark, no hesitation, just expectation. I opened my banking app and stared at the dwindling balance, wondering when generosity had quietly turned into obligation. That day at lunch, I scrolled through my emails and found one from Margaret. The subject line said, "Small things for the big day." Inside was a neatly organized list: flower arrangements, photographer upgrades, lighting design, and even monogrammed napkins. At the end, she'd added one line in italics: "A little help means a lot." It was signed simply, "Love, Mom." I could almost hear her voice, soft, polite, and entirely manipulative. I didn't answer the email either. Silence, I hoped, would be enough to end it. But silence in my family was never interpreted as refusal. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Howard. His message was short, almost businesslike. "Keep your mother happy." That was it. No greeting, no explanation. Just a command disguised as care. I sat there reading it again and again, feeling the words settle heavy in my stomach. By the end of that week, my inbox and message threads looked like a wedding catalog. Clarissa sent photos of shoes, centerpieces, champagne brands, and bridal robes. "This one's only 600. They're giving us a deal. It's for the guests' comfort." Each message was a demand dressed up as an update. I began replying less and less until I stopped altogether. Still, the requests didn't stop. When the florist called to confirm color themes I hadn't even chosen, I realized Clarissa had given them my number and billing address. "We're just confirming your payment preference," the woman said cheerfully. I thanked her and hung up, staring at the ceiling, half laughing, half wanting to scream. They had turned me into an invisible sponsor, the kind who funds dreams without being invited to witness them. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with Ethan, receipts spread out in front of me like fallen leaves. "You're their safety net," he said quietly. "Not their sister." I frowned, tracing the numbers with my finger. "I just want things to go smoothly," I murmured. He leaned back. "Smooth for them, or peace for you?" I didn't answer. There was something humiliating about realizing how easily love could be mistaken for permission. My parents had taught me that family meant giving, but they never explained when to stop. Every request came with an undertone of guilt. If I refused, I was selfish. If I agreed, I was dependable. Somewhere along the way, dependable became convenient. At night, I would check my phone compulsively, dreading new notifications. Clarissa's name appeared more than anyone else's in my recent messages. She'd send a link to a new string quartet, then a discount code for videographers, then a voice memo giggling about how everything's coming together so beautifully. I began ignoring her texts, hoping she'd notice. She didn't. The next morning, she sent a reminder about catering costs since we're finalizing menus today. The total expenses had crossed $15,000 by then. I knew because I tracked every transfer in a spreadsheet, not because I expected repayment, but because it was the only part of this circus I could control. When I told Ethan the number, he exhaled slowly, like someone watching a slow-motion crash. Cass, you realize they see your money as part of the budget, right? Not as a favor. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. It's just until the wedding's done, I said, the lie sticking to my throat. Later that night, while sorting through my emails, I found another message from Margaret. I forgot to include the band retainer, it said. Attached was a PDF invoice. Below it, another line: Clarissa's lucky to have a sister like you. The words glowed under the screen light, sugar-coated and sharp. I closed the laptop without replying. For the first time, I realized that none of them had said thank you. Not once. On Saturday, while Ethan was mowing the lawn, I checked my account again. Nearly $20,000 gone. $20,000 for a wedding that wasn't mine, for a family that treated generosity as duty. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. Then I closed the app, placed my phone face down, and sat in the quiet hum of the air conditioner. I waited for regret to come, but it didn't. Only exhaustion, did the kind that doesn't show on your face, but settles somewhere deeper behind your ribs, where patience turns into something heavier. I knew something had shifted. The line between kindness and self-erasure had vanished, and I had been the one to blur it. The message that ended it all came 2 weeks before the wedding. It appeared in the family group chat while I was at work, between emails and half a cup of coffee gone cold. Adults only. Dress code, elegant and minimal, the message read. Sent by Clarissa, complete with sparkles and heart emojis. Beneath her cheerful tone was something colder, something that didn't match the warmth of the emojis. I scrolled through the thread and froze. My name was missing from the guest table chart she had attached. The file was color-coded: family in gold, friends in blue, vendors in gray. I was nowhere. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I typed, "Did you forget to add me?" then deleted it. Typed again. "Clarissa, can you check the list?" then erased that too. Finally, I called her. She answered after 3 rings, her voice sweet but distant. "Hey Cass, what's up?" I tried to sound calm. "The guest list you sent, my name isn't there." A pause too long to be polite. "Oh," she said, almost relieved that I'd noticed. "Yeah, about that. We had to make some changes." I waited for an explanation. "You know the vibe of the event. The photos have to look cohesive. And well..." She trailed off, then delivered it cleanly, like a line rehearsed too many times. "You'd ruin the photos, Cass." For a second, I didn't understand. The words didn't fit together. "Excuse me." She sighed, that soft exhale she used when pretending to be patient. "It's just, your style's a bit loud, and this is a minimalist theme. It's nothing personal." I almost laughed. "Nothing personal. You're uninviting me from the wedding I paid for." "You're overreacting," she said quickly. "It's one day. Don't make it about you." Then the line went dead. I stared at my reflection in the black phone screen. There's a special kind of silence that follows humiliation, the kind that rings louder than noise. 10 minutes later, another message came in, this time from Howard. Just 4 words. "Don't start drama. Let it go." No greeting, no punctuation. It was like he'd been waiting for this moment, as if peace in the family depended on my surrender. I didn't reply. That evening, while I was driving home, the phone rang again. Margaret. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Her voice came soft heavy with the pretense of diplomacy. Cass, honey, let's not embarrass the family, okay? Embarrass them, I repeated, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Mom, I've been paying for this wedding for months. She inhaled sharply. And we're all grateful, but this is Clarissa's special day. She has her vision. You know how artistic she is. So artistic she erased her own sister. Oh, Cass, don't be dramatic. She said, her patience thinning. You know how things look on social media these days. People judge. You wouldn't want to make her uncomfortable. I almost missed a turn because my hands were shaking. She's uncomfortable with my existence, I said. There was a pause, then that familiar tone she always used to end conversations she didn't want to have. Let's not do this. It's only one day. Be the bigger person. Then she hung up. When I got home, Ethan was in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup. He turned when he saw me, reading the expression on my face before I said a word. They did something, didn't they? I nodded, dropping my phone on the counter. Clarissa uninvited me. Said I'd ruin the photos. He blinked slowly, the kind of disbelief that had already run out of surprise. And your parents? Told me not to make a scene. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes dark with quiet anger. So they erased you, and you're still paying. I didn't answer right away. My throat felt tight, like every unsaid word was pressing against it. The sound of the soup bubbling filled the silence. Finally, I said, maybe they'll realize how cruel this is. Ethan shook his head. People who erase you don't realize it, Cass. They just expect you to keep funding the fantasy. His voice was calm, almost too calm. That night, I sat on the couch scrolling through the wedding updates again. The group chat kept pinging, Clarissa posting mock-ups of table settings, my mother reacting with hearts, my father liking every message. I was invisible in real time. My contributions, my name, my effort, all deleted neatly like they had never existed. I stared at the last photo Clarissa sent, the white floral arch by the lake, the same one I'd booked and paid for. My reflection shimmered faintly on the screen, the only proof I was still part of this story. I closed my eyes and a thought settled with terrifying clarity. I had built their celebration, and they had built it on top of me. I picked up my phone, scrolled to the banking app, and hovered over the last scheduled payment for catering. My pulse steadied. If I was out, my money was out too. The morning of her wedding in Baton Rouge felt unnervingly quiet, a stillness that carried the weight of something waiting to break. Light crept through the blinds as I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, a cooling cup of coffee beside me. On the screen glowed a spreadsheet filled with receipts, invoices, and payments, every dollar I had poured into Clarissa's dream. My name stood at the top of every contract, sharp and final proof that I had built this day from the ground up. It was strange to realize I was both the architect and the ghost, haunting the edges of it. I began with the florist. This is Cassandra Holt, I said, steady and polite. The client has changed the event terms. Please pause all services. The woman on the line hesitated, clearly unsure. Pause as in cancel, she asked. Until further notice, I replied. After a few seconds of checking her system, she confirmed, the contract is under your name, so that's fine. I thanked her and ended the call, feeling the first thread loosen. Next came the caterer. The manager recognized me instantly. Hi, Mrs. Holt. Delivery is set for 2 o'clock. Is something wrong? Yes. I said the client is no longer authorized under this agreement. Please hold the order and arrange a partial refund. He went silent for a moment, then simply said, Understood. By the time I spoke with the lighting team, something in the air around me had shifted. My hands no longer trembled, and each call felt easier, cleaner, almost rhythmic. A few vendors sounded confused, while others didn't question anything once I verified the payments came from my account. One man even chuckled softly, saying, You're the calmest cancellation I've had all month. I smiled to myself. It's not a cancellation, I said. It's a correction. Ethan appeared in the doorway halfway through my list, his towel draped over one shoulder as he watched me. "You're really doing it," he said quietly. "I am." "Is this revenge?" he asked. I looked up at him and shook my head. "No, it's correction." The words came out smooth, almost too calm, like they had been waiting for the right moment to exist. When the last call was finished, I closed the laptop and leaned back. The silence inside the house no longer pressed against me. It felt clean, light, and deserved. Sunlight spilled over the counter, brightening the edges of the room. Somewhere across the city, Clarissa was probably sitting in a makeup chair, smiling at cameras, unaware that her perfect day had already begun to collapse. By noon, my phone filled with missed calls, numbers I didn't recognize, likely vendors trying to reach her. I ignored them all. Emails confirmed refunds and suspended services. Each new message felt like cutting a string that had been holding me down. Ethan joined me at the table. "Think they'll notice before the ceremony?" he asked. "Probably not," I said. "They don't read contracts. They only read excuses." He gave a short laugh. "Remind me never to cross you." I smirked faintly. "You'd have to erase me first." At 2 o'clock, the wedding was supposed to begin. Instead, chaos unfolded. Someone must have started a live stream because notifications flooded my screen. I hesitated, then opened one. The video showed the lakeside venue bathed in harsh daylight. The wooden arch stood bare, chairs neatly arranged, but without flowers. The tables uncovered guests milling about in confusion. Their whispers were audible even through the speaker. Clarissa appeared in the center of the frame, the white of her gown too bright against the dull background. She clutched her phone, shouting at someone off camera, her gestures sharp and desperate. Even without sound, I could read her lips. "What do you mean canceled?" Behind her, Margaret and Howard stood stiff and silent, their faces pale, their composure slipping as murmurs spread through the crowd. The image of perfection they had worked so hard to project crumbled in real time. I didn't feel triumph or satisfaction. What I felt was quiet, the kind that arrives when you finally stop being responsible for other people's storms. Comments filled the live stream. "Who forgets flowers? This looks cursed." "That's karma in real time." I lowered the volume and took a slow sip of my latte. From where I sat, the cafe window framed the scene across the lake like a movie. Guests began leaving, their heels sinking into soft grass. The band packed up instruments that had never played, and white linens fluttered like surrender flags in the wind. My reflection shimmered faintly in the glass, steady, composed, and finally free. Ethan arrived a few minutes later and slid into the seat across from me. "It's everywhere online," he said. "Clarissa's wedding just imploded." I stirred my coffee, watching the swirl fade. Imploded sounds right. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "No," I said. "I just returned everything to where it belonged." He leaned back, silent for a moment, then nodded. "They're going to come for you. Let them," I said softly. "I'm done being quiet." The live stream had already ended, replaced by dozens of short clips spreading across feeds. The flawless image Clarissa had fought to curate had become a public punchline. And in that chaos, something even quieter settled inside me, the balance restored. As we stepped outside, the sunlight shimmered across the lake. The venue now stood empty, chairs, toppled petals scattered by the wind. I looked once more and whispered almost to myself, "Looks classy now." By morning, Baton Rouge buzzed with a restless hum, every cafe and grocery line filled with people replaying the same clips on their phones. The chaos of Clarissa's wedding had gone viral overnight. Local radio hosts debated what went wrong while news anchors narrated the scene as if it were a documentary about hubris. I woke up to a flood of notifications, but none from my family. Instead, Clarissa's post appeared first. "My sister destroyed my wedding out of jealousy." Her photo showed tears mascara streaked down her cheeks, the wilted bouquet still in her hands. Her words dripped with self-pity, and for a while it worked. Sympathy flooded the comments. Strangers defended her, called me Bitter, selfish, unstable. I read it all in silence, not angry, just distant like watching a storm from inside thick glass. Then, just before noon, the first crack appeared. A local photographer uploaded a screenshot of the payment contract signed under Cassandra Holt. His caption read, "For transparency, the entire event was paid by her." Within minutes, everything turned. Sympathy became suspicion, and suspicion turned into fury. Screenshots of text threads surfaced, receipts, bookings, and eventually, the line that burned through the internet like gasoline. "She eats too much. It's a classy event." That one sentence became the headline. Reaction videos popped up by the hour. Someone edited her post with the caption, "She banned her own sister from her wedding after taking her money." Comment sections exploded with outrage. "Imagine humiliating the person who funded you. Money can't buy class. She deserves every bit of this." The tide had turned completely. Clarissa tried to regain control, deleting her post and uploading another, "Please stop the hate." This has gone too far. But the damage was irreversible. Brands withdrew one by one. Local boutique salons, even a jewelry shop that once featured her engagement campaign, issued statements cutting ties. Her name, once painted across glossy posts, now appeared under "Fan family scam" trending across Louisiana. Margaret and Howard stepped forward as if summoned by crisis. My mother called first, her voice brittle beneath forced composure. "You need to end this," she said. "Clarissa is being bullied." "No," I replied calmly. "Clarissa is being revealed." That evening they appeared together on a local morning show, speaking in the tone of victims of misunderstanding. Margaret told the host that family disagreements should stay private, insisting that I had misread Clarissa's intentions. The interview was almost convincing until an email thread surfaced later that night, one between Margaret and Clarissa discussing how to convince Cass to pay for upgrades. The line that sealed their fate read, "She won't say no if you call it a family investment." Within hours, the clip went viral, and the show quietly removed the interview from its official page. The next morning, my inbox overflowed again, but the tone had changed. Strangers apologized for their words. Some vendors sent messages of gratitude for how gracefully I had handled everything. I didn't respond. Silence at last spoke louder than defense. Ethan watched the chaos unfold from across the kitchen, scrolling through his phone. "They're trending again," he said quietly. "Clarissa's losing sponsorships and your mother's emails are public." I nodded, stirring my coffee. "I didn't expose them," I said. "The truth did." He paused, looking at me thoughtfully. "Most people would have written a long post by now and become part of the noise." I smiled faintly. "No. Let silence finish the story." That night, I sat outside on the balcony as the city lights blinked across the river. The wind was cool, steady, and full of something that felt almost like peace. Clarissa's pages had gone private. Margaret and Howard had vanished from television. The noise that once filled every corner of my mind had finally gone quiet. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, they told me to keep peace, to protect the family's image, to never speak when silence could save reputation. But it was that same silence, their version of it, that built a house of lies. Theirs collapsed. Mine stood untouched. I scrolled through the last few headlines, then locked my phone. Ethan brought out 2 mugs of tea and leaned beside me on the railing. "So what now?" he asked. "Now," I said, watching the lights ripple on the water, "nothing. They'll face what they built. I'll keep moving." "Do you think they'll ever apologize?" he asked. I thought for a while. "They already have," I said softly. "Not with words, but with what they lost." For the first time in years, I felt no weight, no guilt, no hunger to be understood. The truth had done what I never could. It spoke, and the world listened. A year had passed since the wedding that never truly happened, and life had rearranged itself in unexpected ways. The noise faded, the city forgot, but the silence that followed was different. Softer, earned, almost tender. I opened my design studio in a sunlit corner of downtown Baton Rouge, a small space with high ceilings and walls painted the color of morning. The name on the glass door read, Holt Interiors. The first project came from a hotel chain seeking to redesign its lobby. When they signed the contract, I felt something I hadn't in years: ownership, direction, peace, that didn't rely on anyone's approval. Work filled my days, and the satisfaction of seeing blueprints become reality grounded me more than any apology could have. Ethan often joked that I built rooms the way I rebuilt myself, carefully, one layer at a time. Meanwhile, my parents drifted toward the life they had once feared, a quiet one stripped of reputation. Howard lost his seat on the church board after the emails became public. Margaret stopped hosting her social luncheons when people stopped attending. The neighbors who once praised their family values now crossed the street to avoid conversation. Clarissa, once the face of bridal campaigns, divorced within months. Her husband filed for bankruptcy, sponsors vanished, and she moved back into my parents' house, the same one where I once felt invisible. The tabloids moved on, but small-town memory never does. I didn't seek revenge. Watching consequences unfold on their own had been enough. The world, for once, had corrected itself without my voice forcing justice. I focused on work, on creating spaces that made people feel safe, balanced, seen. And in doing so, I found the version of myself they had tried to erase, one that didn't need permission to exist. One afternoon, as I reviewed sketches for a client, my inbox pinged. The sender was Margaret Holt. The subject line read simply, "Help." I didn't open it. My hand hovered for a second, but there was no hesitation, only clarity. I clicked delete. Peace didn't come from forgiving them. It came from no longer funding my own humiliation. A week later, my friend Tessa stopped by the studio. She was the only person who hadn't taken sides when everything fell apart, the one who sent coffee instead of questions. She looked around at the finished space, smiling. "You've really made it yours," she said. I nodded, setting down my pencil. "It feels different when it's built from something real." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Do you regret it? Any of it?" I looked up at her, thinking of everything: the silence, the loss, the storm that tore the old walls down so new ones could stand. "No," I said finally. "I stopped funding my own humiliation. That's the one payment I'll never make again." Tessa smiled a small, knowing smile and left without another word. Some friendships don't need explanations. They just hold space for truth. That night, I sat at my desk, camera on, recording the final words of a story I hadn't planned to share, but felt compelled to close properly. The red light blinked steady. Family can break you when you forget your boundaries. I began, my voice even, quiet but certain. Kindness without limits isn't love, it's surrender. And sometimes walking away isn't cruelty. It's the only way to make peace last. I paused, letting the silence breathe for a few seconds before continuing. Thank you for listening till the end. Share your thoughts. Would you have done the same?